Hi everyone. This is Big E with Big E's Boondock Buzz. If you haven't seen our channel yet, this YouTube channel, I hope that you enjoy it. We are new to this as of now, and we did our first interview, and it was with a Vietnam veteran who obviously served during the Vietnam War in Vietnam. He had an incredible story that he shared. I mean, it was about his life. It was before joining the Army. It was what he experienced in Vietnam and how he transitioned out of Vietnam into civilian life. It's a tearjerker. I mean, if you don't feel emotion through that interview, you can't be human. Whether you supported the Vietnam War or not, or if you were during that era, I was just a child, so I don't recall much of it. But it was an amazing interview. His name is Lloyd, by the way, so I hope you enjoy it. But without further ado, I'm gonna cut out here.
First off, I just want to thank you for your service. And Vietnam was a difficult and hard war for many folks. So I'm incredibly grateful that you're taking the time to share that with us today. And but before we get into that, what was your life prior to being in the service? What was that like for you?
Well, I grew up with 5 siblings. I was the youngest of 5, and my father left when I was only 2 years old. So we was very poor, and we had to work the fields or, milk cows. But back at that time, you pulled their tit. You didn't have a milking machine, and so it was quite hard. And I moved when I was 8 years old. Well, we didn't have a restroom or bathroom in our house. We only had running cold water. That night was Saturday night, whether you needed it or not. And everybody back in the same water. And of course, we walked to a one-room schoolhouse. So I was the last of a lot of things in my lifetime. But when I did move up the road in the country, I was 8 years old, and that's when I first met my wife now.
Wow.
So we've known each other for 7 years. But then I moved away from there when I was late 15 or 16, and we went in town, and I didn't like it there. I grew up with 2 brothers older than me that I got a pounding, but I tried to get it back. So I learned quick, and the city boys, they would always try the country boy, and it didn't work so good for them. But I don't know, I hated it in town, and so I went and I talked to an Army recruiter in my late 16, and that's what I decided I was going to do. I was going to quit school and go in the Army. So I took my test when I was 16, and I went and I joined in May of '64. So I took my basic at Fort Knox, Kentucky, and then I went to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, where I went to engineering school for heavy equipment. And then they tested us, and the top 12 of us stayed for on-job training instructors, and I was one of them. And then we moved the engineer site from Fort Belvoir, Virginia, to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And after being there a while, they tested us again, and I became a classroom instructor. So I did a lot in between. I mean, I'd sign a Jeep out and go up and drive for the battalion commander. We had them all. No testers for laying into shipyards, on the airstrips. I was only supposed to be there a day or 2 and get on a ship, but that didn't happen. And I was there 7 days, and they snuck us out at 2:30 in the morning, and we boarded a TWA flight. And so we flew over, and after stopping in Hawaii and Wake Island and Guam, and we finally landed, and I went into Saigon at that time. So I was in Saigon a couple days. Every morning you had to do the roll call, and if you had orders, you were very lucky, because if you didn't have orders, no matter what your MOS was, they pretty much said, get on that truck and you were infantry. But I had my orders, and I was assigned to the 864th Combat Engineer Battalion, and they were in Cameron Bay. So when I went through the line and I had my orders, they said, go over there in that corner and bum a ride to Cameron Bay. Well, it's not like Cameron Bay is just down the road. It's quite a ways down the road. So I went over there, and
I do have to ask you a question. You enlisted during the Vietnam era. Not many would do that. Why did you enlist during the Vietnam era? What made you enlist? Most guys were drafted, from what I understand, but you enlisted. You volunteered. What drove you to make that decision?
I wanted a new life. I wanted to become a man, and I did real quick. But really, we didn't know all the stories about Vietnam. We didn't understand them all.
Elaborate on that.
Well, we just never talked about it. I mean, really, when I was sent to Vietnam, I mean, I didn't even know where I was going or what it was about, and a sergeant told me, he said, how are you the unlucky one to go to war? And I says, how do you mean I'm going to war? And he said, well, you're going to Vietnam. I said, that's where we have a war going on. And I'm telling you, us young guys, we just didn't know. I didn't really know anything, and how people were draft dodgers and how they protested the war. I didn't know anything like that until I really went to San Francisco. And but I hated school. I needed a new life.
What was your MLS job description again?
Well, there, see, I was an engineer, a construction engineer is what I went to school for, but they put me into a combat engineer spot.
Okay.
And so I was only with the 864th a few weeks, but an interesting story is when I was there, we was right on the beach, and a gorgeous beach in Cameron, and we just, we'd go into the bay with our underwear on or whatever, and so I had done that, and then I worked night shifts, so I come back and I picked up my towel and shaking the sand out of it, and I got up and somebody grabbed me from behind. Well, you're very, you don't like that too much, and so I turned around and fist up, and the guy said, whoa, brother, don't you know me? Brother. And I looked at his name tag, and it was my brother. All them miles away, and he had gotten drafted.
Wow.
He got sent over, but he was a stevedore on a ship. They unloaded ships.
Literally your brother, your biological brother.
Yes, my brother, my oldest brother. And so I almost belted him, really, but then the rest of the time we had there, I only got to see him a couple more times. But also, I picked up my nickname Lizard while I was still there.
Why were you called Lizard?
We kind of had a tiki hut down the beach, and I kind of went down and got pretty well stewed, and I woke up the next morning, I was laying on a tent, and I'd thrown up all over the tent. And some guys woke me and they said, hey, Lizard, you finally getting up? And I said, what the hell, who's Lizard, And I said, why do you call me Lizard? They said, well, come on, we want to show you something. So we went down to the beach, and where it's all ribboned off, and they said, look at that path coming through there. Yeah, they said, that was you crawled through that last night. That's a minefield. They said, you're goddamn lucky you didn't crawl across the mine. And so I got the nickname Lizard.
Jeez.
And it stuck with me.
Glad it stuck with you, and you're still here to tell about it. Do you have any challenges that you would like to talk about that you were faced with while in Vietnam?
Well, I said they sent me up to the 102nd, and there I worked a night shift in a quarry, but they kind of had me in charge of the quarry as far as an enlisted personnel, and we went to work at 6 and then till 6 in the morning. But a lot of times they sent me TDY, which everybody knows is temporary duty.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of temporary duties, and mostly building helipads.
Wow.
And, so I was, where was I? I went all over theater, but I got in where the VA said that I got into the worst of my Agent Orange was in Pleiku and Anke, where I went, the foliage was all dead, but I had a humongous tractor tiller, rototiller, and I tilled all this stuff up. It was just dust. We had no mask, nothing, and so all that dust got in my face. And, so I didn't know at the time, which you don't, we're young guys and whatever, but
Brushed it off, literally, probably.
right. And so I was acting, like I said, I was acting sergeant then. They put me acting sergeant back at Cameron, but I still went all over the place. Well, then when it was time to leave, I had very close friends. Some had already rotated out, and some didn't.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. So after your time in the service, what was your experience coming out of the service? What was that like? Transitioning from active duty to civilian? What was that like?
Well, when I come back, I had PTSD real bad.
Okay.
But I wanted an honorable discharge. They wanted to give me a medical, and I didn't want it. So I gave up my sergeant stripe, and I didn't have any duty until I got my honorable. And then I went right into the VA hospital.
Was that related to Agent Orange or?
Well, that was my. At that time, they didn't even call it PTSD. They called it a nervous disorder. And it wasn't until years later they finally admitted it was PTSD. But, I was only in the hospital so long, and then I get out, but I was bad. I drank. Oh, I drank terrible. And I was drinking a fifth of whiskey a day, straight. And even when I go to work in the summertime, I go with a coat on. I just shake, but I'd lose it. Cops were after me and this and that. But then I'd end up back in the hospital and wet sheets, padded cells, and this went on for 7 years. So I was married for 18 years.
Yeah.
And her girls were, well, they all had my name because I had their names changed and everything. And so I don't know. That time I owned my own rig, my own tractor trailer, and one time when I come home, she said, I'm looking for a house. And I said, well, what's wrong with ours? And she said, well, I'm going to leave it. I said, yeah, right. She said, no, I'm going to leave it. And I, why? And she said, am I happy? And I said, yeah, right, though. And I come home again, and she said, well, I found a house. I said, you're serious? She said, yeah. Oh, you live getting divorced. That was enough of that married stuff for me. I'm done with all that. And one thing I missed telling you is when I come home from Vietnam, I went back up and seen my cousin wife back up in the country where she was a junior in high school, and her mother was a Navy veteran. She was a naval nurse. So her and I was very, very close from when we were little, and so she allowed. I had bought a brand new Chevelle when I come home, and she allowed Nan, is her name, to go with me that night out, and she was probably crazy because here I am a crazy idiot from the war and everything, but somehow her mom knew that I was safe, with me. And so Nan and I got to talk a lot, and that was the last I'd seen her for 42 years. I was on Facebook one day. Nan found me and got a hold of me, and she was going to have she's an artist, and she was having a showing of her arts, and asked me if I could help her move them into where she was showing. And it was only the next town down, and she was from down by Philly at that time, and we're up in northeastern Pennsylvania. And so, yeah, I helped her do that, and we got talking, and her marriage was really, really bad, and it had almost come to an end several times. And her mom lived with them, and she told me, she said, you got to get out of here. She said, he's an idiot. And So the time came, and I talked to each other on the phone quite a bit, but the time came where he really goofed up and at a restaurant, and he left her. He went home and packed bags. She had to get a ride home, a cab, and so she changed the locks, and so that was the end of her marriage. But my friend and I, we went down and helped her and her mom move up to a town, 2 towns above us, above where I live, and we got her all moved up there and everything, and then I take her down for her hearings through her divorce and stuff, and we got to be really close again, and while she was there, and we just started seeing each other a lot more and more, and still really good friends, but it became more than that. So she started living with me because I have my own place, and so we lived together 7 years, and during that time, we bought her mother a home right across from where I lived, and we were out in the country. And she bought the home, but it was my buddy's land, and so it was going to be when Mom passed away that he would be able to buy the home, and he'd have it all. But her mom passed away in June of 24, and it turned out better for him to sell her the land. So right before we came on this trip here to Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, we settled with him on the land, and she now owns that property right across from my property.
So you guys do travel
In the winter,
vacation?
in the winter because of my health, I get pneumonia right away. If I get cold, I get double pneumonia. And 3 years ago, we tried not to leave, and I ended up with a collapsed lung and double pneumonia for 3 months.
Is this all related to Agent Orange?
Well, the Agent Orange is related to
Everything, right?
My 100%, I'm 100% disabled, DAD, but that's on I have systemic heart disease, which is from Agent Orange.
Yeah.
I had a heart attack, and then 10 years after that, I had to have stents put in. And I have neuropathy in both legs, and both of my feet are numb. And I have cancer, prostate cancer, eyes, in my lungs, the COPD, everything's related to cancer, or to Agent Orange. And the VA admitted that. And we're going to wait 6 months and see how it reads. And he says, as long as it stays in the same area, which is kind of high, it's in the 8, 9 area. And I'm going to be 78 here in May, and it's too late to get operations now.
There's a lot of young men and women. It's like a regeneration, if you will, of individuals wanting to join the service. And that's really in the last couple of years. What advice do you have for younger men and women that are thinking about a career or maybe 4 years in the service? What advice would you give them?
Well, before I left, after my family knew that I joined, my brother-in-law at that time, he was a Korean vet, and he had a Purple Heart. He was shot through the shoulder, but he said to me, my advice to you is keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut. And that's what I would tell young people today too, because I remembered that all these years, and it is very important. But I'm glad to see that they go in the military now. And as a matter of fact, I'm hoping my grandson will go in after his graduation. He's talking about he'd like to be a pilot, and he's very, very intelligent, and his whole family is on his dad's side is very intelligent, and he could do it. He just puts his nose to the grindstone. Too many kids, they can't get away from this. Can't get away from them computers and even their telephones and everything. Put them down, and enjoy nature, and if you don't want to go in the military, get a job. Go to a trade school. Don't go to college and waste all that money and end up with nothing. So if you really want a nice education and you can't afford it, join the military. And not only are you serving your country, but you're going to help yourself in the long run. And so it's very good. And it doesn't matter what you go into. At one time, I would have given the advice of join the Air Force because they always had it made, and which they really did. When like in Vietnam and stuff like that, I mean, they were sleeping in Quonset huts with air conditioners, and we were still in a tent. Well, they had ice cream, and I didn't see a bowl of ice cream in a year. So, so it's but anymore, I mean, a lot of them do come in joint bases now, and they're intertwined with each other. But just depending on what you want to do, what you want to do in life, but don't pass it up. I mean, if you can't afford college or your parents can't afford it for you, boy, look into the military. Make a good life for yourself.
Good advice. I do agree 100% with everything that you said there. Lastly, I'm looking at a postcard that that Nan gave me last night or yesterday evening, and I believe this might be you in here. I have to believe it is. It's a very detailed painting of 3 veterans kind of hovering over the wall in Vietnam, and a picture of a Vietnam vet, which I'm assuming is you again, kind of just looking at some names on the wall, it appears to me. And there's such emotion in here. Can you explain to me what this means to you and how this came about?
May I elaborate first that I had said about her mom passing away in June of last year. And so 24 was a bad year. And she was 102.
Wow.
And she would have been 102 in October. So it was really hard on Nan. Nan's had a real rough year. And I said we've lived together for 7 years. So Christmas this year, I surprised her with a diamond. And
lovely.
And that was for Christmas. And January the 17th, we got married. So after 70 years of knowing each other, we finally got married. But
Never too late.
Never too late.
So,
Congratulations, you two. That's
Thank you.
beautiful. That is beautiful.
I always knew that I had to go to the wall. And I wanted to take all my girls, my daughters. But I said, if one can't go, none of us will go. Well, my next to the oldest daughter had just got a job with Geisinger Medical Group. And if you miss one day in 90 days, you don't get the job. So what we had set up fell through. Well, I just didn't seem to be able to get to the wall. Finally, Nan, this is way before she even lived with me, talked me into going to the wall. So her and I went, and this is when she was still married. And her and I went to the wall, and she did not bother me while I did my tour of the wall. But I knew she was taking pictures. But as I finally come up from the wall, the 3 soldiers there, that's another of the men guarding the wall. And so I sat on the bench, and I got a lot of fist bumps from brothers and thank yous from different people. And a young man about 15 years old had my head down, and I know I had big tears in it, but he said, "Sir," and I looked up and he said, "Thank you for serving." And that was really something. So she was there, and I said, "Do you want to sit down?" She said, "Yes." And she sat by me. She said, "How you doing, buddy?" And I said, "Well," I said, "You really want to do a painting, don't you?" And she said, "I'd love to do a painting if you'd let me." And I said, "I have 3 things that I would want you to do." And she says, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, first of all, I'd like you to put me in the wall." And she says, "Wow," she said, "I've never done anything like that." She said, "But I'll give it a try." And she said, "What else?" And I said, "Well, that veteran that you put into the wall," I said, "it's not to be known that that's me, that's any veteran. Because this wall does miracles." And she said, and what else? And I said, we call it painting closure. And she said, you found your closure? And I said, I think so. I never talked about Vietnam before that. My children weren't allowed to even mention it. And since then, we've taken a picture and there's a story behind it. And she's read it in front of congressmen and senators and veterans groups, and representatives, and just any place that they wanted to listen. And everything was going real well, and then of course COVID come along and it kind of messed up everything. But we're still out there, and
it goes everywhere we go.
So,
And we share with whoever wishes to see it, and we tell the story.
some of the good things that happen are like we'll be sitting in a hallway. We have our painting set up and everything, and veterans will come and they'll just look at it and they reach out and they touch it. And so for that reason, she put a special blaze on, because we don't want to stop them from touching it. It means a lot to them, and they even have grabbed a hold of her and picked her up and gave her a hug.
Off the floor.
So it's been a lot. It's been a lot to other people, not only us, but a lot of veterans have said, they've said to us, we didn't make it to the wall, but thank you for bringing the wall to us. So it's quite moving, for us. I mean, I have a hard time really talking about it, but if it just helps someone else. My thing to you would be, if you haven't been to the wall and you're having problems, go to the wall. Go to the wall. Get a hold of Honor Flight, and they'll make sure you get to the wall. Just get there. And no matter how old you are, we're all getting pretty old now, but if at all possible, get there and see how much it helps you. I don't know what else to want.
well, Lloyd, I just want to thank you so much for taking time out this afternoon and sharing your experiences with us. We'll be sure to put some links out in this about what was that program, or that with the
Honor Flight.
Honor Flight. We'll put a link out for Honor Flight. Also links for on the VA for those who struggle with any of the topics that we've talked about. But until next time, I'm grateful for all of you that joined us here at the Big E's Boondocks Buzz, and until next time, we'll meet again. Thank you very much.